Crossing under the Greyfriars and Ladies Lane roads, we come to the Greyfriars bus station. It was built in the mid-1970s and is named after the religious order of Greyfriars or Franciscans who established a small settlement here during the 13th century. Crossing over into Sheep Street, we come to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. Built by Simon de St. Liz, it is now one of only 4 round churches left in England and is probably the largest and best preserved. Others are at Cambridge, Little Maplestead, in Ludlow Castle and the Temple Church in London, but the one in Northampton is said to be most like the original church in Jerusalem. It was built after St. Liz had returned from his crusade in 1099 and as a thanksgiving offering for his safe return. His design was modelled on the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem and consisted of the round part of the church and the straight chancel leading east. The chancel now forms part of the nave and the remainder of the church has been added to over the years, but much of the original Norman church is there for everyone to enjoy. On the west side of the tower we find pitted bullet marks about head height. These probably occurred during the Civil War. Leaving the churchyard, we go back into Sheep Street. Looking towards the junction of Campbell and Broad Street, this used to be called North End and was the North Gate entry when the town walls were situated along the line of the upper and lower mounts. This was a view of Sheep Street in 1972 and how it looks today, dominated by income tax officers. Oriel House, surprisingly, has an Oriel window. The house was reconstructed in 1982 as the original Georgian house was dilapidated. As we look down the street we see many of the Georgian features of the housing of that time. Crossing back over the carriageways we come to a little row of shops. Once a 17th century inn, the building was also the townhouse of the Earl of Halifax and originally the seat of the Dodgy Academy. The upper story, of about 1700, has classical pilasters between the windows. Dr. Doddridge lived here from 1740 to 1751, and during this time it was one of the most famous educational centres of the Midlands. Students enrolled at the academy for 5 years if they were training for church ministry, or for 3 years if they were hoping to be a teacher or a scientist. At the top of the drapery is the northwest corner of the Market Square. In this area, called the Parade, we're now looking at the Bingo Hall, which was once the fine building of the Corn Exchange. Built in 1850, it opened on the 29th of March 1851, primarily for the marketing of corn, but since then has had a long history of public entertainment. This is the Corn Exchange interior in 1851. This is the hall being used as a recreation centre for troops during World War I. In 1920 it turned into a cinema. In 1930 it was used by operatic societies and to stage plays, and turned back into a cinema in 1960. This was the Odeon in 1974, the last week. And now it's a Gala Bingo Hall. We continue on down the drapery. Originally this name was given to the street due to the large number of drapers who occupied the west side opposite to the marketplace during the 18th and 19th centuries. It is known that drapers lived in this street from the 14th century alongside glovers on the east side, this side originally being called the Glovery. Here we are opposite the National Westminster Bank. High up at the top of the building is a stone emblem of a phoenix. This mythical bird with beautiful plumage was used as an emblem by the old Percival's Bank. This bank had been in existence since 1790 and during the economic boom of the 1830s combined with several other banks in 1836 to form the Northamptonshire Union Bank. The phoenix still continued as an emblem and also appeared on banknotes and cheques. In 1841 the Union Bank rebuilt its premises with the guidance of a young Northampton architect, E.F. Law, and placed in the decorative pediment of the facade was a symbolic stone phoenix. In 1920, the Union Bank was amalgamated with the National Provincial Bank and is now a branch of the National Westminster. The next large building down is Debenhams, Northampton's first large department store. It was originally acquired from a Thomas Pressland in 1874 by a Frederick Adnett, who was mayor of the town from 1900 to 1901. It's interesting to note that during the First World War, the shop premises of Adnett Brothers was used for both retail and residential purposes. The female staff had small bedrooms on the upper floor, and the male staff were accommodated in Swan Yard. The shop was rebuilt between 1958 and 1962, although the name Debenhams was not used until 1973. Walking further down the drapery, we find a variety of 2-, 3- and 4-storey buildings. Many have quite distinctive and ornamental decorations around their windows. A little further down, we reach a rather odd-looking shop called Philadelphus Jay's until recently. It was Philadelphus Jay's who in 1810 took over the complete ownership of the apothecary's shop, and that although the original Jay's died in 1828, the firm has remained in the family until taken over by a chemist chain store and now a sports shop. The premises themselves are old, and underneath the building are arched cellars which stretch under the road and were used as air raid shelters for staff during the Second World War. The style of shop building and the architectural folly Holly Lodge, which is the Jay's family home at Malton, perhaps accounts for the family's unusual invention, namely the disinfectant fluid which is used throughout the world. If we take the narrow alleyway opposite the pedestrian crossing, this leads to College Street.